This is going to be TMI. I'm going to need to put a disclaimer into this video. I'm Esther Snow, and I'm currently living in Vancouver, Canada with my husband, who is working towards his PhD in research science. A lot of things I don't understand. I'm currently a stay-at-home mom. We're both US citizens, and we were raised in Japan, and we met in college. My YouTube channel is just kind of a place for me to look back on and see my growth throughout my life, and given that I just came out of pregnancy, that's the kind of content I'm doing right now. And I have videos on various stages of my life and just things I've learned along the way and mistakes that I've made, and that's what this channel is. So if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be on this journey together. So you guys might hear the air conditioning coming on and off in the background. My sincerest apologies, but I like to keep it climate controlled so that my daughter can enjoy her nap. This video is just kind of covering the third trimester, and this is a little late, but it seems fitting that this would be late because she was late. So that's what this video is going to be covering. If I remember correctly, the third trimester starts at about 28 weeks. Heartburn continued to get worse. I went through a couple of weeks where it just kind of went away for a little bit, but it did indeed come back with great vengeance. And so the heartburn was a little rough. I remember the main difficulty was just I was getting bigger and bigger, and every time it felt like, oh, I can't get any larger. There it was. I was larger. That just became kind of difficult, just the exhaustion of carrying around the extra weight and just the sudden growth that happens in that third trimester. It didn't feel so sudden until that third trimester. It just felt like all of a sudden I was just getting bigger and bigger. So during the third trimester, the pain from the growth got really intense. Sleeping was really tough. Finding a comfortable position when you have like such a massive stomach like that just gets really, really tough, because even to roll over in your sleep, you do that unconsciously, right? Like you just kind of roll over. But during pregnancy, every time I went to like roll over, I would wake up because I physically could not roll from this side to this side without having to like help myself to get over. And so if I was going to roll over, my body just woke me up to be like, it's time to roll. So that was pretty exhausting. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, sure, the rolling, but like I wasn't comfortable. So between heartburn and just physical comfort, it was really tough. I was exhausted all the time. I don't feel like I had like a crazy intense first trimester exhaustion, but during that third trimester I felt like I could not sleep enough because I was just so exhausted and like fatigued. I didn't have to do anything, I just was tired. And then after a little while, the pain, I don't know, I can't describe where it was because I don't think I was describing the place correctly, but anyways, I couldn't walk well. Those last like 3 weeks or so, it was brutal. I mean, she was only a week past due, but at that appointment, they were saying that she might be 9 pounds. So she went from being below average in weight to all of a sudden her being like measured at 9 pounds, which honestly explains the sudden growth. I literally did not have stretch marks until I think the last 2 or 3 weeks of pregnancy. And then all of a sudden it was intense and I felt it. My skin almost felt numb. Heard of some people describing like itchiness and dryness, and for me it just almost felt numb. Felt strange. It didn't feel like my own skin. I don't know if you've ever had like a scar that has like the scar tissue that you can see, and when you like touch that, like it doesn't feel normal. It almost feels like uncomfortable for it to be touched because it's like not normal sensation. And that's what my like entire abdomen and belly felt like, because she was just so stretched out all of a sudden. The walking was excruciating. It felt like it was pretty sudden, and laying down didn't necessarily make it feel better, but definitely like going from laying down to like sitting up to standing up and then walking, like any motion that like put pressure on my lower body really hurt. And I was terrified for labor because I was thinking, if this is how much pain I'm in now, then like what am I gonna do when like I'm supposed to be relaxed, sit in different positions to try to like help move her down. And I was really nervous for that, but I mean I did get the epidural, but even during the portion of labor that I didn't have the epidural for, I think you're just in so much, or at least for me, I was in so much other pain from the labor that like I felt so much more mobile during labor than I had the weeks leading up to it. I think my body just was trying to like relieve the pain, and so I just was able to move more freely than I had the weeks prior. If I asked Andrew, he could probably remember because I'm sure I was complaining to him a lot. Honestly, the main thing I can remember is walking. I had quite a few appointments towards the end, and so we were walking places, and I was honestly scared to have to take public transport because I didn't know, like, what if I have to stand on the bus, and I just was like in so much pain. We don't have a vehicle here, so we do EVO, which is like a car share program. We ended up having to do that much more than usual because I couldn't walk the same way, and so the idea of walking to the bus station and then subsequent walks after that to get from point A to point B, I couldn't do it. It's really hard to explain because it was like a soreness but also like a tightness, and honestly because I can't remember too much about my third trimester, because again I do remember sleeping and movement were like the main things that really started to get to me, and then the exhaustion. I felt like at night I was hardly sleeping, and then during the day I was just constantly sleeping. So that's like the main things that I can remember for that. So I figure I may as well just cover the fourth trimester as well. And for those of you that don't know, the fourth trimester is the first 3 months that she was in existence, because you're going through your own physical healing, and also it's while you're having the newborn, and that in itself is a huge transition. About the third trimester, I did like finish up prepping for baby and that kind of thing during that time. So I had my hospital bag packed, and I was doing research on what I needed to have before she was born and what kind of things I could wait until after. As a disclaimer, this video I am going to be going in depth on some of my postpartum experiences, and because the nature of birth and postpartum, it's a little explicit. I'm just being very honest and open about what the process was like for me, and so if that is something you are uncomfortable with, please feel free to leave this video at this time. Viewer discretion advised. But if you would like to know the realities of it, feel free to keep watching. After she was born, I did have a 2nd-degree tear and a couple of 1st-degree tears, all of which were stitched up. I had the epidural, which kept me pain-free for quite some time, but obviously eventually the pain indeed returned, and I thought for a little while that I had kind of like lucked out and just wasn't in much pain, but within a couple days of giving birth, I started throwing up again, and so I was like, oh, it feels like first trimester all over again. I had never had stitches before, and so having stitches where you sit, it's just a very uncomfortable thing to have. So I was taking medication consistently around the clock to make sure that I wasn't in excruciating pain. Just like sitting, you could feel like the tension and sometimes like pokiness, and it just, anyways, it's very uncomfortable. So between that and the throwing up, those first couple days were a little rough, but I did find out that between nursing and just what your body's gone through from labor, that if you didn't eat like small bits consistently and you ever got to the point that you were hungry, then sometimes people throw up. I also went down in weight very rapidly. So when I came home from the hospital, I was only 10 pounds less than when I had gotten to the hospital. That sounds like a lot, but she in of herself was 8.5 pounds when she came out. And then there's the amniotic fluid and placenta and all of that, and so all of that has weight. I don't think I had shed anything, pretty much. It was just everything was just, that was, I guess, the weight. Within, I think it was a week, I had lost an additional 15 pounds. So for reference, I was about 115 pounds or so when I got pregnant. I lost weight because of all the throwing up during the first trimester and dropped down to 108 or so. Then by the time I was at my heaviest that I recall, obviously I wasn't weighing myself every day. I kind of tried to avoid the scale as much as possible during the pregnancy, but I did want a little bit of reference point so that as I was losing weight, I could kind of know where I was going from. So the heaviest I ever weighed myself, which was very close to the time I gave birth, so just under 150 pounds. So I had gained 35 pounds from my starting weight, and within about a week, I had lost 25 of that. So I was sitting at about 10 pounds over my starting weight, so 125 pounds. And when the midwife heard that, she was like, oh yeah, that's like a lot of weight to lose very quickly. And it's important, especially with breastfeeding, to make sure that you're eating enough. So once I kind of got that in check, and I also took some medication for nausea as well, that helped kind of subside that. So the nausea and the throwing up did go away. And I think around 2 weeks is when I started feeling a lot better. But actually, maybe it was like 10 days. And I started feeling substantially better. The stitches weren't as like spiky and painful anymore. Pain just in general from my body healing wasn't as brutal. Oh, that I forgot. Milk coming in. When my milk came in, oh my goodness. Within a day, it was like going through puberty within a day. We'll put it that way. I looked very different from what I had looked like in the morning to what I looked like at night. My husband got home and was like, what happened here? It was very sudden. Obviously that was engorgement, but with that came just a lot of like, just the supply hadn't been regulated, and so there was just a lot of excess to the point that these are the liners that go inside of the diapers. I had these tri-folded like this to be extra thick and stuffed in each side of my bra to collect the extra milk that was just pouring out day and night. And overnight, I would change these 2 to 3 times because they were being soaked through. So that was kind of hard, and it's also quite painful when it first comes in, which I don't know why, but I just did not anticipate that to be such a painful thing. And then letdown also was sometimes quite painful. Oh yeah, so much is coming back to me. When you first are breastfeeding, it can cause contractions to continue to bring your uterus back down to its original size. And so those contractions were pretty painful. I wouldn't say that they're anything close to labor, but still, when you have like a newborn and you're just going through all this other stuff, it's just one more thing that was hurting, and it just kind of adds up. Like I said, once the milk came in, that was quite painful and also just uncomfortable when clothes are wet all the time. And it got to the point that it was spraying a lot, and so we were going through laundry like crazy. I had quite a few burp cloths because I anticipated, oh, baby spit up, and so I'll be going through a lot of burp cloths. Psych. The first few weeks, I don't think she spat up once. Maybe she did. But that was not the predominant mess. The predominant mess was every time I would go to feed her, it would spray, and it was a struggle. I really was nervous about trying to go to anywhere because I was like, how am I supposed to breastfeed and like wear the covering thing when I'm like fire hosing my child? Spoiler, it does regulate and it's much better now. But at the beginning, it just seems like this is it. This is crazy. The first day it came in, that morning, I used the Haka, which is kind of the silicone cup, to kind of take any excess. And in one sitting, I had 6 ounces of milk, which I didn't know, but apparently is a lot. So very quickly, my midwife was like, okay, just feed on demand. Don't like try to not to take any excess out because it's very much a supply demand type thing. And by taking it out, I was essentially saying, oh, I need this. So it was really difficult at first to figure out how to balance it, especially because with how engorged it was, I could not physically lay on my stomach. And even on my side, the pressure and weight of one breast onto the other caused the letdown and caused, it was basically like a manual pump. It was like pressing it out. So again, sleep got difficult again, which I was like, I thought the weight of the baby, like not having that stomach thing was going to make it easier. But for those first few days that the milk was coming in and that whole adjustment, it felt like it was the end of the third trimester again. But that did not last too terribly long, and it did regulate itself. The spraying lasts probably almost a month, but that also has subsided. Clearly the fourth trimester, a lot more happens. The third trimester felt really, really, really long, I feel like, in comparison, because it's the end of the tunnel and you're just waiting, and there's the question mark of when is she actually going to be born. And in my case, I was nervous about labor and just wanting to kind of get it over with, but also like nervous about how bad it was going to be. And then you're just physically tired. Sorry, I keep saying you, but I was physically tired, and I was ready for it to be over and have my baby. Despite the fourth trimester being quite difficult, it felt very quick. After the engorgement kind of went down and that got a little situated, right around the 2-week mark, I started having excruciating pee. To the point that, this is gonna be TMI, but I was like crying, trying to pee, and it wasn't like, if you've ever had a urinary tract infection, it was nothing like that. It literally felt like if you had a paper cut or something like that, and then someone tried like peed on it, and that was the kind of pain it was. It was so excruciating that even if I tried to dilute it, they give you like a peri bottle. That didn't work. Even, again, gross, but peeing the shower didn't work. And so the pain was so intense that when it would happen, my body would clench up, and it would cause me to like not pee for an extreme amount of time because I couldn't physically relax enough to pee. So that lasted for probably about 2 weeks, and I'd say that that was the worst part of postpartum thus far. I eventually found, if you're a mom out there and you have a similar thing, this was the only thing that worked for me. I don't know if there's something better out there, but literally just hands on the ground, bent over when I was peeing, so that the pee goes straight down, so it does not touch anything else on you and does not touch any of those cuts. Yeah, I don't think it was the 2nd-degree tear that hurt like that. I think it was those 1st-degree tears that were much more surface level, and it was like a paper cut. And again, like if you ever like put like hand sanitizer on a cut on your hand, or if they're really dry and it just hurts, it's like that, but a little worse. And so that was just really challenging, and it started happening like a day or so before my mom left. And so I was super nervous because it was taking me like 30 minutes to properly pee, because you can't not pee, because then if you don't, you could get a urinary tract infection. So anyways, it was a horrible, horrible process, but made it out on the other side. And one thing that I was very surprised by or interested in, for everyone, the like time frame that their like belly takes to kind of shrink back is very different, and also the time frame it takes to get back to your pre-pregnancy weight, if that ever happens, is very different. So I came home from the hospital looking probably 6 months pregnant, and I'd say within a week I was looking much less. It was like, with a baggy shirt you couldn't really tell that I had like a pooch, but it definitely was still very much there. And at first it was very, very soft. They say that there's a lot of like gas at first, and so it was very like bloated in that way, and it slowly just kept like slimming down. It was about 2 weeks ago, so about like 2.5 months, and I'm back to my pre-pregnancy weight, but still very soft, and it's still a little bit of a pooch. I think I have a little bit of diastasis recti because I'm able to push in like the center of my abdomen a little bit further than I could pre-pregnancy, and it just seems like there's a little bit of a split in my ab there. I have some exercises that I am supposed to do and will do, but I honestly have not been super motivated to work out, but I do really want to re-strengthen my body. I think at the beginning it was just, or even recently, just wanting to kind of physically like feel stronger and better by just like eating well, sleeping well, and those kind of things, and just exercise kind of has fallen to the back burner. I still walk a good bit, but that's besides the point. When I was freshly postpartum, I could not walk far. There was some pretty intense pain and just major discomfort associated with walking a long distance. I don't know the distances, but I think around a kilometer, maybe a little more. I think around a kilometer was my like physical limit, because anything more than that and I couldn't do it. I think again, just there's a lot of things that had gone on, and then my body also was still healing from, even like I was saying, I was having a tough time walking at the end of the 3rd trimester. And so for the first week or so, I couldn't walk further than a kilometer, and my mom and I kind of found out my limit just by taking some walks and being like, like I'm starting to just really struggle with just walking. So it was very interesting. I know every pregnancy is different and every postpartum is different. Every person is very different. And so it'll be interesting if I have kids in the future, if this will be completely different from that postpartum experience. Andrew had asked me between 1st trimester, 2nd trimester, 3rd trimester, and then this newborn postpartum phase. Sorry, labor was also included in that. How would I rate them as far as best to worst? I'll start with worst. 1st trimester I'd say was the worst. I feel like it's a tie between 3rd and 4th, but I'd probably put 4th as worst. It's hard because you have your baby finally, and so even though you're in pain, like it feels like there's a purpose, whereas at 3rd trimester, the purpose isn't quite clear yet, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna have to put 3 and 4 as a tie. Then I would put labor. Then I would put 2nd trimester. 2nd trimester absolutely was not the worst. And I'll give a little explanation. The reason I actually would put labor below the 3rd and 4th trimester was because although the pain was excruciating and intense, there was like a very finite time. Like I didn't feel like this is gonna last for 3 months. In labor, there's a little bit more of like a baby will be out and like this will be over. And again, I do want to acknowledge that other people score and rate theirs completely differently. I'm just telling you kind of my experience. So if you've gone through pregnancy and birth, I would love hear your ratings in the comment section. So if you would rate your 3 trimesters, labor, and postpartum, how would you rate them as far as like best to worst? And if you want to include why, then feel free. I think that would be really interesting because I'm sure other people have very different experiences. So I actually have a birth video that was Andrew and I talking through the birth story, and I'll go in more in depth as far as how that went, what we did, and all that good stuff. I will add one little note that I don't think I added in that video, so if you made it to the end of this video, here's a little bonus info. I spoke Japanese more than English during labor. When I was talking to Andrew and was like trying to communicate something, I would often speak to him in Japanese rather than English, which I thought was really interesting. That's not like my default language. So it was very interesting that in pain like that my default was Japanese. So that was a new experience. Thank you so much for watching this video. My sweet little girl has napped through the entirety of it, despite the fact that I'm talking right by her head. I really enjoyed getting to kind of reminisce about my end of pregnancy and early motherhood journey. I truly didn't know that I would ever be pregnant. Now being on the other side of having been through pregnancy and birth, I feel very blessed. It's quite surreal, honestly. I still, when I look at her, and I'm just surprised, like, wow, I have a daughter. It feels very strange. It feels very foreign still. But I'm really enjoying motherhood, and even through all this pain, I think it definitely is worth it. My mom always would say, like, oh, she forgot the pain and you just don't remember. And I think there is truth to that. I do think, like I said with the 3rd trimester, I remember complaining a lot, but I just don't have clear memory of it now. I think the love for your child just continues to grow and that becomes a distant memory. But I do think it's healthy to remember if I am going to have more children in the future. I just want to have this to look back on and be prepared. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and share it with others. And by liking, you are supporting this channel. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like it. And like I said, comment that thing down below. See you in the next one. Bye guys.